Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Racha, Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of First Kings. And over the past couple of months or so, right, going into the books that we've gone through so far, I sort of started almost at the end of what was referred to as the Old Testament, with a lot of the books that led up to the Babylonian captivity, right, and then the Medo-Persian captivity. Didn't go into the Greeks just yet, but before carrying forward, I want to just come back a bit, right? So with the set of chapters here, starting with First Kings, going up until I think about the book of Jeremiah, this all the books within this section will be dealing with the age or the period of the divided monarchy, right, and the prophets. So within this time of the book of Kings leading up to Jeremiah, you have the passing away, right, the ending of King David's reign and the introduction of King Solomon's reign, which then takes us through to after Solomon, and then the era of the kings after the kingdom is divided, and in the era of the kings of the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom going on down. Okay, so starting here at this point, we have at this point in history, King David is old, right, as we're about to go into. He's old, he's pretty much on his deathbed, but in terms of the condition or the state of Israel at this time, Israel was a united kingdom, right, and they were at the top. So that the Near East, as they call it, if I just pull this up here, Near East, or even Levant, as also is referred to. Maybe let me use Levant. Levant map. Yeah. So this is a good region here. That red highlighted part right around this area is all quiet, right? And when I say quiet, I mean they're all subject now onto Israel. And that's one of the main things that King David was able to accomplish, was the subjection of these other nations, these neighboring nations under us, which is why King Solomon's kingdom was so peaceful, because was it 40 years of peace? There was no war, because we were the reigning, I guess you could even call it empire, to some extent, right? So now let's go into the book of First Kings, chapter 1, verse 1. Now King David was old and stricken in years, and they covered him with clothes, but he got no heat. Now, here when it says they covered him with clothes, let's actually look up the word clothes here, but I believe it's instead of like clothing as you would think of, your regular garments. Let's just look it up here, right? So it says garment, clothing, but I think there should be some cross references here. One possibly leading to Samuel, if I can find that. And if I can't find it, then it's fine. You get the point. They covered him with something, whether it was cloths, right, or whatever it was there. Okay, yeah, I think this is the one, right? 1 Samuel 19 and 13, same word, H899. And Michal took an image and laid it in the bed, and put a pillow of goat's hair for his bolster, and covered it with a cloth. And this is when she was covering for David to escape, right, before Saul could get to him. But there, that makes a bit more sense. Now, why did they cover him with clothes, as it says, but he got no heat? Okay, as we're going to go into, when you're in your old age, and what I ended up doing was I looked up here, just a basic site on symptoms, right? As it says here, 11 end-of-life symptoms in older adults. And just skimming through here, it says, okay, we don't need this part. Nice. So end-of-life symptoms timeline. Now, when it's a couple of weeks before your end of life, these are like just general symptoms they have here. Some of the earliest signs have to do with a sense of resignation that may involve low mood, lack of motivation, and withdrawal. The person may spend more time reminiscing about their childhood and early life experiences. Loss of appetite, general weakness, and increased fatigue become noticeable. Now, days before the end of life, your loved one will likely sleep more than they're awake. They'll move and talk less and may not respond to conversation or commotion. Their sense of hearing is most likely unchanged, but vision may be impaired. Other signs in the final days include drop in blood pressure, heart rate, and body temperature. Again, this is sort of the main part that I wanted to focus on here, right? That body temperature. So, yes, physically, you would imagine most likely his different parts, right? His hands, his feet, and stuff like that, they would be a little colder than usual. But when you actually go into the word heat, as you'll find out, and what's also interesting is most scholars don't actually explain this part to what it actually means. Okay, a lot of the general consensus, and I have a feeling why, but a lot of the general consensus is that it's referring to literal just body temperature, right? That he just couldn't warm up. But we'll see why that's not only the case here. So when we go into this word heat here, as it says, he got no heat, we have yacham. It says to be hot, conceive, right? So you have two different use cases here, or words here, versions, whatever you want to call it. To become hot, to mate of animals, right? Sometimes you may hear the term, whether it's for like a pet, that they're in heat, which means it's like mating season. Today you would say you're aroused, right? You're in that, you're in the mood. To be or become hot, figuratively, of anger. It's not what we're referring to here, right? But now it says here to conceive sexually, right? Or to be in heat. So another way, another end of life symptom that wasn't mentioned here, which mostly it's like, it doesn't have to be directly, right, at the end of life, but it goes to, I think, impotence. Let's see. Impotence. Yeah, right. It says, wow, interesting. Known as erectile dysfunction, a sexual dysfunction that makes it difficult to get or maintain an erection. The point here is, if the man couldn't get an erection, then they knew that, okay, this guy, his time is up, right? So to test that, what did they do, right? Verse 2, wherefore his servants said unto him, let there be sought for my lord, the king, a young virgin, and let her stand before the king, and let her cherish him, and let her lie in thy bosom, that my lord the king may get heat. So if we're talking about just warming him up physically here with just body temperature or whatnot, what is the need to seek out a young virgin to come and lie in his bosom, lay with him, and cherish him, as we'll go into that word to see what are the use cases there, that he may get heat? We're also going to go into that word there. If it was a matter of body heat with a woman, well, he had many wives. Why not one of them, right? Or if it was a matter of just physical warmth, why not just stack more clothes or cloths on top of him? All right, so there's a bit more going on here. So anyway, they're saying, look, he's pretty much almost there, right? But let's take these measures to ensure, to see if it's really, he's really like right at the door. So they came up with the idea here, right? The servant said, look, let's go find a nice young virgin. And the point is, if this virgin can, as she ministers, serves, cherishes, plays, and all that with him, laying in his bosom, what you think that's about? Anyway, as she does that, if he is not able to get aroused or do anything to her, then he's gone, right? He's pretty much half foot out the door to the spirit world. So the young virgin says, and let her stand before the king, and let her cherish. Let's go into that word cherish. We have here sakan, right? It says here to be of use, to be of use, to benefit, to be used, to be want, to show harmony with, be familiar with, know intimately, right? So that was the whole point, because by her cherishing him, right, trying to know him intimately and get intimate with him, that was to trigger the natural reaction in the man, which is to get aroused, right? It says here, and let her lie in his bosom. That let's put this word here, see what they have here. Bosom basically meaning in the midst of him, right? Like in up close, right? You can see here, it says here, meaning to enclose, bosom, bottom, lap, midst, within. All right. You can imagine you give somebody a hug, they're in your bosom, right? It says here that the king may get heat. So they brought this virgin, she's supposed to get all intimate with him so he can get heat. Now, the word here for heat, it says to become warm, to grow warm, of passion, to become aroused, right? And that's the typical reaction. Now, with arousal also comes actual heat, like in terms of your body temperature rising, right? So all I did was type in here, does arousal warm up the body? Yes, arousal can increase your body temperature. Some of the changes that can happen to your body when you are aroused include your blood pressure, heart rate, breathing, and temperature goes up. Okay, and then here it says sexual arousal, and that's pretty much the method that was being used here. Thermal imaging studies have shown that body and face temperature increase during sexual arousal. Other physical responses to arousal include faster breathing and heart rate, flushed skin, and increased blood flow to the genitals. That's that erection, right? But in this case, unfortunately, that didn't work, right? That even though this was supposed to be the trigger, right? Verse 3, so they sought for a fair damsel throughout all the coast of Israel, and found Abishag, a Shunammite, and brought her to the king. So this Abishag was got to be one of the most beautiful women they were able to find, right? And they brought her to the king. And I mentioned in the beginning of the video that I believe the reason why this interpretation isn't really mentioned by a lot of these scholars is because of what's the word I'm looking for here? The stigma or the thought that would come around it to say, are you saying that in this time they actually went and found a young virgin to bring her to an old man so that she can give him an arousal so that he can know her intimately? Like, what? That's what they did. Because back then that wasn't something that was crazy to think about, but it was also a measure to test, once again, how much time King David had before he passed. Now I want to look up Shunammite. Okay, don't really give us too much here. An inhabitant of Shunem. All right, not that important. So, carrying on. So they went and found Abishag. They brought her unto the king. It says here, and the damsel was very fair, meaning she looked very good, and cherished the king and ministered unto him, but the king knew her not. So what do you think that means? The king knew her not. Does that mean that King David just didn't know who she was? He just couldn't wrap his head around, who is this person? No, knew her not, meaning he didn't lay with her. He didn't have sexual intercourse with her because it was his time to go. So by this, they knew, okay, he's pretty much gone. And any measures that need to be taken while he is alive, because he was still the king, they need to be done fast. Okay, so by this sign, they were able to tell, okay, King David is pretty much about to die. And also, like a precept for this is, let's look up here, know them. A more disturbing version of this, but nonetheless, in Genesis 19:5, when the angels came to Lot in the Sodom and Gomorrah, and he brought them in, remember where Lot was dwelling, he was dwelling among Sodomites in the sense of inhabitants of Sodom, but also Sodomites in the sense of these people were actually committing these wild acts of bestiality and, sodomy and all these weird things. So when they saw the angels come to Lot's habitation, this is what they said, right? And they called unto Lot and said unto him, where are the men which came in to thee this night? Bring them out unto us, that we may know them. That know doesn't mean they wanted to sit down and have a conversation and get to know each other and say, oh wow, you're a pretty cool guy, let's play soccer together. No, because if that was the case, let's read on and hear what Lot's response to that was. Verse 6, and Lot went out at the door unto them, and shut the door after him, and said, I pray you, brethren, do not so wickedly. Why would them wanting to quote unquote know these men, these angels, be wicked, if all they wanted to do is have a conversation and find out who these men were? Because that's not what it means by know. It means they wanted to have sex with them. Remember, these were Sodomites. So, and to further even prove that, what was Lot's reasoning or alternative here in verse 8? He pretty much said, look, if anything, I have 2 daughters. Once again, let's read this, verse 8. Behold, now I have 2 daughters which have not known man. What does it mean they have not known man? It means they're virgins. Okay, they haven't known intimately, slept with men. That's what it means there. Okay. Let me, I pray you, bring them out unto you, and do ye to them as is good in your eyes. Only unto these men do nothing, for therefore came they under the shadow of my roof. Okay, so I think that should be enough to get the point across as to what is meant, coming back here to 1 Kings chapter 4, or 1 and 4, about King David not knowing Abishag, this young woman over here. Okay. Verse 5, then Adonijah, the son of Haggith, exalted himself, saying, I will be king. So why did he do that? Because now he's like, oh, it's confirmed. My father's almost gone. I'm the eldest here. Of course I'm going to be king. Actually, let me just confirm that he was the eldest. I believe he was. Let's see. Adonijah. Oh, okay. So hold on, let's look up Adonijah. I want to make sure we're accurate here. Oh, actually, he was the 4th son of David. Interesting. Okay. So maybe he wasn't the firstborn. But let me see. I wonder what it was. Because I believe possibly at this point, yes, Absalom was already dead. And yeah, I forget the exact nuances in here. But point here being, Adonijah, son of David, exalts himself. He's happy, thinking he's going to be the one appointed king, right? And he prepared him chariots and horsemen and 50 men to run before him. And his father had not displeased him at any time in saying, why hast thou done so? And he also was a very goodly man, and his mother bare him after Absalom. So at no point did King David give him any signal to say, what do you think you're doing? Whoever said you were going to be the heir or the next king. On top of that, it says he was a goodly man, right? He probably had the look, the fit, and all of that. So it would be easy to believe that, okay, it's going to be him. All right. Verse 7, and he conferred with Joab, the son of Zeruiah, and with Abiathar the priest, and they following Adonijah helped him. But Zadok the priest and Benaiah the son of Jehoiada and Nathan the prophet and Shimei and Rei and the mighty men which belonged to David were not with Adonijah. So there was this separation here. Now, oftentimes what I think about is like scenes from Game of Thrones, because they depict this kind of court intrigue and so on very well, so you can get a visual of how intense these things can actually manifest or turn out to be. As you're just reading them, it's not just words on the paper. These are things that are happening here, right? You imagine Adonijah, he has, Joab, Abiathar, he pretty much has that, his group already, and you can imagine as we keep on reading what the scene is like, because you have certain individuals that they think they're going to be in the next one in power. Others also think it. So now they're all joking. They're happy. Hey, when you get in power, you're going to make me this guy. Oh, yeah, I got you. When I come up in there, I'm going to make you this. And you, I got you. You said you wanted this. That kind of thing. Verse 9. And Adonijah slew sheep and oxen and fat cattle by the stone of Zoheleth, which is by En-Rogel, and called all his brethren, the king's sons, and all the men of Judah, the king's servants. But Nathan the prophet, and Benaiah, and the mighty men, and Solomon his brother, he called not. Wherefore Nathan spake unto Bathsheba. So, it's all the working of the Lord why he didn't call them here, but also at the same time, there had to be some drama, right? It's a low tension over here. Verse 11, wherefore Nathan spake unto Bathsheba, the mother of Solomon, saying, hast thou not heard that Adonijah the son of Haggith doth reign? And David our Lord knoweth it not? When it says he doth reign, it doesn't mean officially, right? But it means like this guy's pretty much like, it's looking like he's the king already. And King David, nobody's aware of this. What's going on? Now therefore come, let me, I pray thee, give thee counsel, that thou mayest save thine own life and the life of thy son Solomon. Why? Why did he say that? Because what's one for those that have watched House of the Dragon, right? Things like the prequel to Game of Thrones. As you watch that season 1, even in season 1 alone, you start to see how eventually there comes this fighting for power by the mothers, right? I think the daughter of the king and also his new wife, right? And so they're going back and forth. They both want their son to be the heir and so on and so forth. Or the daughter wanted to be. Point is, there's this back and forth about who's going to be inheriting the throne afterward, and one side is afraid that when the other side wins, they're going to kill them and their children and all of these things, right? Verse 13, go and get thee in unto King David, and say unto him, didst not thou, my lord, O king, swear unto thine handmaid, saying, assuredly Solomon thy son shall reign after me, and he shall sit upon my throne. Why then doth Adonijah reign? Behold, while thou yet talkest there with the king, I also will come in after thee and confirm thy words. So the plan here is you go in, you tell him this, and while you're doing that, I'm going to come and back you up, basically. And Bathsheba went in unto the king, into the chamber, and the king was very old. And Abishag the Shunammite ministered unto the king. So you can imagine, right? She's the one, and not just, it's not like she was just there 24/7 just touching him and playing with him and stuff, right? But she would make sure he's okay, right? Serve him as well, because ministering goes into serving. Verse 16, and Bathsheba bowed and did obeisance unto the king. And the king said, what wouldest thou? And she said unto him, my lord, thou swearest by the Lord Yahweh thy God unto thine handmaid, saying, assuredly Solomon thy son shall reign after me, and he shall sit upon my throne. And now, behold, Adonijah reigneth. And now, my lord, the king, thou knowest it not. Let me actually take a quick look here. Okay. Wanted to see if there were any cross references to this. So anyway, so she's making this complaint to King David, right? Verse 19, and he hath slain oxen and fat cattle and sheep in abundance, and hath called all the sons of the king, and Abiathar the priest, and Joab the captain of the host. But Solomon thy servant hath he not called. And thou, my lord, O king, the eyes of all Israel are upon thee, and that thou shouldest tell them who shall sit on the throne of my lord the king after him. So everybody's waiting for you to make the announcement. And this typically is what happens when you're a king and you have multiple sons, right? Or children. You have heirs. And it needs to be announced who is going to be the one to inherit the throne. Verse 21. Otherwise it shall come to pass, when my lord the king shall sleep with his fathers, that I and my son Solomon shall be counted offenders. Now, let's look here at the word offenders. See what we have here. Chata, sinners, right? Exposed to condemnation, reckoned as offenders. Criminal, one accounted guilty. Now, what's interesting about this is, why would, number one, King Solomon, remember, we read here that Adonijah invited all his other brothers except King Solomon, right? And now Bathsheba's worried that if Adonijah becomes king, then both her and Solomon would be counted offenders. So, you can speculate a bit that King Solomon, remember, Bathsheba, right? People would know eventually, right? After King David took her to wife, people eventually would know, wait, wasn't that Uriah's wife? Oh, right, Uriah ended up dying. Oh, that's a shame. But people would talk, right? Damn, Uriah ended up dying, but that's the king. Of all the women, he could have gotten any woman he wanted. He wanted Uriah's wife though, for what? Like what? Anyway, so he took her to wife, right? And then the firstborn child died, of course. That was the through adultery, right? That child was born. So they ended up dying. But then she had Solomon. So now you can imagine the sort of look from the other sons at Solomon, which is sort of like your mother, like the stigma over there, right? This is just speculation here, but to put it in a realistic sense, they probably wouldn't look at Solomon as like fully, one of them-ish kind of things, right? And so it would be easy here, being that he wasn't even invited, right, to substantiate her concern about her and her son being counted offenders, possibly being even put to death, right? Verse 22, like you're the son of a widow, right? Like your mom was, this Uriah's wife, she became a widow. Then like you're only here because King David, wanted your mom or whatever, right? Just trying to paint a visual here. But continuing in verse 22, and lo, while she had talked with the king, Nathan the prophet also came in. And they told the king, saying, behold, Nathan the prophet. And now, I want to pause here, right? Verse 23, they told the king, saying, behold, Nathan the prophet. Now, remember, as we read in some of the end of life signs, when you're old like that, you don't really react to commotion that much. You're very quiet, barely move. Talking is probably difficult to do as well, right? And so it makes sense that there's someone that's there that the king whispers to when he talks, because obviously he can't really speak loud. We all know what this kind of looks like, right? So then this person goes and relays the message. And likewise, when something happens, because he probably doesn't have his vision even at this point, right? Or it's very dim or not as good as it used to be. Somebody would have to inform him, whether it was Abishag, I think that was her name. Yeah, I forgot that already. But the Shunammite, whether it was her or some servant or whoever it is, to say, hey, such and such is here, and then they might lift him up, sit him up a little bit, or if he's too weak, they might just keep him laid down on the bed, and then just have this person come closer, and then talk to the king, right? typically that's how it is. When you have like really, really old relatives, you go to visit them, you know, they can barely move. They probably have you repeat the same thing like 3 or 4 times because their memory is not as it used to be, you know, and they probably can't see you. So they move their hand a bit. You got to hold their hand, show them that, okay, it's me. Yes, this is me here. You know how it goes. So, resuming back in verse 23, so they told King David, behold, Nathan the prophet. And when he was come in before the king, he bowed himself before the king with his face to the ground. And Nathan said, my lord, O king, hast thou said Adonijah shall reign after me, and he shall sit upon my throne? For he is gone down this day, and hath slain oxen, and fat cattle, and sheep in abundance, and hath called all the king's sons, and the captains of the host, and Abiathar the priest. And behold, they eat and drink before him, and say, God save King Adonijah. See, so this is what I was sort of mentioning earlier. You can imagine that at their table of them drinking and having a good time and laughing, almost as though it's official that Adonijah is going to be the king. Verse 26, but me, even me thy servant, and Zadok the priest, and Benaiah the son of Jehoiada, and thy servant Solomon hath he not called? Is this thing done by my lord the king, and thou hast not shewed it unto thy servant? Who should sit on the throne of my lord the king after him? So did you like co-sign this at some point? You just didn't tell us, or what's going on? Then King David answered and said, call me Bathsheba. And she came into the king's presence, and stood before the king. And the king sware and said, as the Lord liveth, that hath redeemed my soul out of all distress, even as I swear unto thee by the Lord God Yahweh, Bahasham Yahushai of Israel, saying, assuredly Solomon thy son shall reign after me, and he shall sit upon my throne in my stead. And he paused for a bit. You got to give him some water. I'm just joking. Even so will I certainly do this day. Then Bathsheba bowed with her face to the earth, and did reverence to the king, and said, let my lord King David live forever. And King David said, call me Zadok the priest, and Nathan the prophet, and Benaiah the son of Jehoiada. And they came before the king. The king also said unto them, take with you the servants of your lord, and cause Solomon my son to ride upon mine own mule, and bring him down to Gihon. And let Zadok the priest and Nathan the prophet anoint him there over Israel, or their king over Israel. And blow ye the trumpet, and say, God save King Solomon. Then he shall come up after him, that he may come and sit upon my throne. For he shall be king in my stead. And I have appointed him to be ruler over Israel and over Judah. And Benaiah the son of Jehoiada answered the king and said, Amen. And the Lord Yahweh, God of my Lord the king, says so too. This is Benaiah speaking. And the Lord Yahweh, or as the Lord Yahweh hath been with my lord the king, even so be he with Solomon, and make his throne greater than the throne of my lord King David. So Zadok the priest, and Nathan the prophet, and Benaiah the son of Jehoiada, and the Cherethites and the Pelethites went down, and caused Solomon to ride upon King David's mule, and brought him to Gihon. And Zadok the priest took an horn of oil out of the tabernacle, and anointed Solomon. And they blew the trumpet, and all the people said, God save King Solomon. And it's interesting too, because when King David was anointed, that was also sort of done secretively, right? Because Samuel had to find a way to get this done, as he feared, Lord, King Saul is already, reigning. what's he gonna do to me if he finds I'm anointing somebody else to be king while he's already king? And interestingly enough, here it is. They had to go and anoint Solomon, separately here as well, while attention of the rest of the people was on Adonijah. And all the people came up after him, and the people piped with pipes and rejoiced with great joy, so that the earth rent with the sound of them. So imagine if you were driving by a stadium, or you were driving by a concert a concert that's been sold out, and you can hear the people, yelling, screaming, singing along to the song, and you can hear the loud voice. You're like, what the hell is that? And the closer you get, the louder it gets, and then you hear the music and the drums and you know what I'm saying? So you can imagine it's almost like a modern day concert following King Solomon here, as people are rejoicing. Hey, Solomon is king. Verse 41. And Adonijah and all the guests that were with him heard it, as they had made an end of eating. So here it is, these guys over here, chilling and all that, right? They eating and drinking and having fun and making mirth. And so they hear this sound. Oh, what's all that? People screaming and stuff. What's going on? And when Joab heard the sound of the trumpet, he said, wherefore is this noise of the city being in an uproar? So you hearing sounds, trumpets, like, what's going on? Why is everybody, what's the commotion? And while he yet spake, sit down. Where we at? Yeah, verse 42. And while he yet spake, behold, Jonathan, the son of Abiathar, the priest, came. And Adonijah said unto him, come in, for thou art a valiant man, and bringest good tidings. See, so they still don't know exactly what's going on, but you can imagine here at this table, they're already discussing plans. Joab, you're going to be this, hey, this guy, you're going to be this. Hey, don't worry, man, you're going to be this one. Cracking jokes and all that. And Jonathan answered and said unto Adonijah, verily, our Lord King David hath made Solomon king. Down. Hath made Solomon king. And the king hath sent with him Zadok the priest, and Nathan the prophet, and Benaiah the son of Jehoiada, and the Cherethites and the Pelethites, and they have caused him to ride upon the king's mule. So you imagine they hearing this, what now? And Zadok the priest and Nathan the prophet have anointed him king in Gihon. And they are come up from thence rejoicing, so that the city rang again. This is the noise that ye have heard. This is the noise that ye have heard. So you can imagine, what? Listen, hey, don't play, man. Don't be playing, no. Don't play those games with us, man. Is this true? So now all the food, that joint stopped midway in the upper intestines. That food stopped right there, mid digestion. So anyway, as it says here, verse 46, and also Solomon sitteth on the throne of the kingdom. And moreover, the king's servants came to bless our Lord King David, saying, God make the name of Solomon better than thy name, and make his throne greater than thy throne. And the king bowed himself upon the bed. So they're like, yo, it's official. It's official, man. And also thus said the king, blessed be the Lord Yahweh, God of Israel, which hath given one to sit on my throne this day, mine eyes even seeing it. And all the guests that were with Adonijah were afraid, and rose up, and went every man his way. Oh, nah, whoa, what? I don't want to be seen or heard. I don't want it to be known that I was here. I don't want peace. Verse 50. And Adonijah feared because of Solomon, and arose and went and caught hold on the horns of the altar. So you can imagine now why? Because in his mind, I'm safe here because you're not going to shed blood in the temple. right? You're not going to shed, or not really in the temple here because the temple hasn't been built yet, right? But you're not going to shed blood if I'm holding on to the Lord's, the altar. And it was told Solomon, saying, Behold, Adonijah feareth King Solomon, for lo, he hath caught hold on the horns of the altar, saying, Let King Solomon swear unto me today that he will not slay his servant with the sword. Now also what I want to do is, let's see, significance of holding the horn of the altar. Let's see if they have something here. In the Bible, the horns of the altar had multiple meanings, including refuge. The horns of the altar provided a place of safety for refugees or fugitives. Well, for example, in 1 Kings 1 and 50 to 53, Adonijah fled to the horns of the altar for shelter after trying to take the throne for himself. Figured as much. Continuing. And Solomon said, If he will shew himself a worthy man, there shall not a hair of him fall to the earth. But if wickedness shall be found in him, he shall die. So King Solomon sent, and they brought him down from the altar, and he came and bowed himself to King Solomon. And Solomon said unto him, Go to thine house. And that brings us to the end of the book of 1 Kings, the first chapter. Pretty decent chapter, but here we saw the sort of the transition of power now from King David in his old age. He's not dead yet, right? To Solomon being the new king at this time. Okay, so Lord willing, this was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Recha, Kodash. And until next time, Shalom.